In the spring of 1943, as the Africa Corps crumbled under the combined weight of American and British forces in Tunisia, something unexpected was about to happen. Thousands of German soldiers, including some of Hitler's most elite generals, were about to discover a different kind of warfare: life as prisoners of war in America. The battle for North Africa had reached its climax. American forces, fresh from their landings at Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers in November 1942, advanced eastward along the coast toward Tunisia. From the opposite direction, British forces pushed westward from Egypt. The famous Africa Corps, once commanded by the legendary General Von Arnim, found itself trapped in a vice with nowhere to go. When the Africa Corps finally surrendered in May 1943, it wasn't just enlisted men and junior officers. America suddenly found itself in possession of some of Nazi Germany's highest-ranking military minds: generals, admirals, colonels, men who had shaped the course of the war in Europe. Among the captured were 25 generals and 3 admirals, 43 high-ranking German officers in total. These weren't common soldiers. These were the architects of Blitzkrieg, men who had conquered Poland, France, and nearly Britain itself. And they were coming to America. The journey from the deserts of North Africa to the American heartland must have seemed surreal. By 1943, the United States was holding over 425,000 Axis prisoners of war in camps scattered across the nation, from California to Texas, from Tennessee to Mississippi. But for the generals, something special awaited. Camp Clinton, Mississippi, a facility specifically designed to house the highest-ranking enemy officers ever held on American soil. What these German generals found there would shock them, and in many ways the world. The Geneva Convention of 1929 required that prisoners of war be treated according to their rank and with conditions comparable to the captor nation's own military. America took this seriously, perhaps more seriously than any nation in history. Each general received his own private bungalow, complete with a garden. General Von Arnim, who had replaced Rommel as commander of the Africa Corps, was given not just a house, but a car and driver. Some locals swore they saw him attending movies in Jackson, drawn to the theater because it was the only air-conditioned building in town. Lower-ranking officers had small apartments. Even enlisted prisoners received 40 square feet of living space, the same as American soldiers. Officers enjoyed 120 square feet. If prisoners had to sleep in tents while their quarters were being built, so did their guards. The reality of life in American POW camps defied everything these German soldiers expected. Under the Geneva Convention, they were paid American military wages, 80 cents a day for enlisted men, the same as an American private. They could buy beer in camp canteens. Officers enjoyed wine. Many wrote home, saying they ate better than they had in the German army. The food is abundant. We have gained weight here. The Americans treat us with dignity. These weren't propaganda. These were private letters, words these men never expected would be read decades later. But it went beyond food and housing. The camps provided recreational facilities, libraries stocked with books and magazines, musical instruments, printing equipment for camp newspapers, theaters for plays and movies. Religious services were held. Sports equipment was provided. The prisoners could send and receive letters, subject only to military censors checking for intelligence. It wasn't just about being humane. The American strategy was calculated. By treating German POWs well, they hoped Germany would reciprocate with American prisoners. But there was something else, something very American at play. These camps became a showcase of democratic values versus totalitarianism. With millions of American men fighting overseas, the nation faced a severe labor shortage. The solution? Put the POWs to work, but only under strict Geneva Convention rules. No dangerous work. Nothing directly supporting the war effort. And they had to be paid for their labor. German prisoners found themselves working in canneries, mills, and farms across America. In Mississippi's Piney Woods region, they worked in lumber and pulpwood industries. But the most ambitious project involved more than 1,500 prisoners at Camp Clinton. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had long dreamed of building a massive-scale model of the entire Mississippi River Basin, a project covering 200 acres that could predict floods and save billions in property damage. German POWs helped clear the land, laid drainage systems, moved tons of earth, and recontour the terrain. Their work was valued at several $1,000,000. Think about that. Enemy soldiers, men who had fought against American forces in North Africa, were now helping to build one of America's most important flood control projects. In the decades that followed, data from that model would indeed save billions of dollars in property damage. But there's a dark shadow that makes this story even more remarkable. At the very same time German generals were living in bungalows with gardens in Mississippi, millions of Allied prisoners were suffering under Nazi captivity. American POWs in German camps faced starvation, disease, brutal forced marches, and death. The treatment was even worse for Soviet prisoners. Of nearly 6 million captured by Germany, around 3 million died, mostly from starvation, disease, and execution. The Geneva Convention meant nothing to Nazi Germany when it came to the Eastern Front. The irony is almost unbearable. While American taxpayers funded comfortable accommodations for enemy generals, their own sons were dying in German camps. The criticism was fierce. Many Americans demanded the POWs be executed immediately. Labor unions protested their use as workers, but the government held firm to its principles. The Roosevelt administration faced enormous pressure. Every casualty list in American newspapers fueled public anger. But they maintained a difficult position. Treating prisoners humanely wasn't weakness. It was strategic, moral, and, ultimately, who America claimed to be. So did German generals really call American camps heaven on earth? The historical record shows they certainly could have. After years of wartime rationing, military discipline, and the brutal conditions of desert warfare, these camps must have seemed miraculous. The phrase, heaven on earth, captures the shock these men felt. They expected harsh treatment, perhaps even execution, even before the war. Instead, they found themselves in better conditions than many had. Who knew what Germany was doing to its prisoners. The cognitive dissonance must have been overwhelming. The camps became something unexpected, windows into American democracy. Many prisoners attended English classes, learned about American history and government, participated in camp newspapers and democratic decision-making. POWs could elect representatives to meet with camp commanders and file complaints. When the war ended, these men would return to Germany, but they would carry with them memories of a different way of living, a different political system, one that treated even its enemies with a baseline of dignity. Today, little remains of Camp Clinton and the other POW camps scattered across America. The bungalows are gone. The barracks have been demolished. The camps that once held 425,000 enemy prisoners have faded into history. But the story didn't end with the war. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, these prisoners remained in American camps, some until 1946. The labor shortage meant politicians in agricultural states actually requested more POW workers. These men had become part of the American economy, the American landscape. My grandfather never forgot his time in Mississippi. He said it saved his life. While other German soldiers were dying on the Eastern Front or in Soviet camps, he was planting trees, eating well, and learning English. He told us many times. The Americans showed us what we could have been. In the decades since, many former POWs have returned to America, not as enemies, but as friends. They bring their children and grandchildren to see the places where they spent the war, where their lives were spared, where they were treated not as monsters, but as men. The story of German POWs in America during World War II isn't simple. It's not a comfortable tale of American heroism. It's far more complex than that. It's a story about the cost of principles, about maintaining values even when it seems illogical, even when your own people are suffering. Was it fair? No. American POWs in German camps would have been outraged to know their enemies were living comfortably while they starved. Many Americans at home were furious. The ethical contradictions are real and painful, but it was also a statement about what kind of nation America aspired to be. Not a nation that mirrored its enemies' cruelty, but one that held to international law even when it was difficult. Especially when it was difficult. When German generals called American prison camps heaven on earth, they were really commenting on hell. The hell they'd left behind, the hell they knew existed in other camps, the hell they might have expected. The camps weren't heaven. They were simply what happened when one nation decided to treat its enemies as human beings protected by law, even in the midst of the most brutal war in human history. Perhaps that's the real lesson. Not that America was perfect, it never has been, but that even in war, even in hatred, even in the face of genuine evil, it's possible to maintain a shred of civilization. It's possible to say, we will not become what we're fighting against. That choice, more than any battle, may be the real victory. By the end of World War II, over 425,000 Axis POWs were held in the United States. 371,683 were German soldiers. Camps existed in every state except Nevada, North Dakota, and Vermont. The official death rate for German POWs in American custody was among the lowest of any belligerent nation. Many former POWs emigrated to the United States after the war. The Mississippi River Basin Model, built partly by POW labor, operated until 1993.